Good evening. We are back with one of the projects from that I started last year. This is part of the 10 Fantasy RPG Women. I'll admit that this line work has been ready to be colored for a while now, but holidays kind of crept up on us and things got crazy. So now that we're getting back into the new year, one of my resolutions is to kind of wrap up some of my open projects. And so, unfortunately, I did not have time to name this particular barbarian, even though technically I've had her ready to go for a while. So that's something that I'll probably be working on as I go. So hopefully by next week we'll have a good name for her. Yeah, so I don't know much about her backstory. One of the things I am planning to do with this project of the 10 Fantasy RPG Women is to come up with a story to go with the artwork and eventually do shorter compilation with the story as background to some of these videos that I am taking of the process. So the first 5 ladies each kind of have the rough idea of a story, but aside from her being a hunter of snakes, and therefore I determined her class was going to be a barbarian since I already have a ranger. Yeah, don't have much more information on it. Why does she hunt snakes? Why is she obsessed with it? Is there actually a snake problem, or did she have some sort of childhood trauma? Anyway, so, but yeah, previously I have done, so the plan is, if you can't tell from the title, to do 10 of these basically fantasy ladies that you could find, maybe even play in a fantasy RPG like D&D or Pathfinder or one of a number of newer role-playing systems. And so let's kind of loosely sticking with terms I'm more familiar with from D&D, like Barbarian, Ranger. I think that's actually a thumb there. We have... So, what do we have so far? We have a... First one I did kind of as a multi-class because it came out a little weird. So I've rolled up some of these, so did a random generation of like backstory for a couple of them. So like the first one, which was Grana, she was our warlock, or is our warlock assassin. And so I ended up rolling through a couple of different sites for random character generation. Like her backstory, I think I got from the can't exactly say its name, probably on YouTube or Twitch maybe, website, but I mean it's called Who the Frack is my character. You know, Frack they replace that appropriately with and like that's just like a one sentence description or something like that. And so I think her description had been the assassin's description had been that she killed her sibling over a birthright or something like that, and was somehow attached to like the. Sorry, we play like a homebrew. Like we don't play one of the modules for D&D. We play a homebrew, so I'm not as familiar with the greater setting of D&D, but there's some sort of, I think it's like an assassin's guild of like the rat catchers or something like that. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't technically use that in the story, but that does tell me that, hey, she's an assassin of some sort. And I'm like, I don't know what sort of like birthright thing she would. Yeah, I can't remember if. It's been a while because it was like near the beginning of last year, I think, that I came up with it, or maybe earlier than that. So I can't remember what all got rolled, but her backstory is essentially that she and her brother were a part of an assassin guild, or at least their occupation was as an assassins, and there was some sort of birthright that was related to a pendant of some sort that would be connected with magic, and eventually that's what kind of turned her into a warlock. But she didn't quite realize what it was she was getting into, I think. Just that she really wanted it. Don't think any fine print was read here. But yeah, she ends up killing her brother to get the object. And I think I rolled on a different like random table for, okay, well, what kind of warlock is she? Because I couldn't. There's different ways in you have to have a patron of some sort. That's your source of magic when you're a warlock is some other powerful being, not you. So, and it's not something like for sorcerers, it's something in their blood. Like usually it's draconic blood or something like that. As far as the D&D universe goes, again, this is sort of from the D&D perspective, but not to say that these classes and stuff don't exist outside of D&D. They aren't exclusive. It's just some of this may have different ways to define what a sorcerer is. Is that Mon? I think it's Sky. Okay. So you could, if you're going to be a warlock, you could have a patron that is a fae, some sort of arch fairy or something like that. You could have one that's a fiend. So demons, devils, that sort of thing. I don't know if one has exclusivity over it or not. 'Cause demons and devils are two different things from two different planes, and it's all confusing. And anyway, so at least in the D&D lore. So, and then or some other powerful creature. So I'm like, I can't decide. There's a lot of options here. So the whole point was more or less to have something that I could do a drawing of, but I wanted to have a decent amount of background. Probably didn't need as much background as I rolled up and stuff, but found out that one of the old ones was one of the options, and that's what I rolled, and then it had a table as to which old one. So it could be a god or some other older entity. And yeah, it came up with somebody apparently put on that random table. Great. Now I'm gonna forget his name. Oh, I'm gonna turn this music down just a little bit more. It is a little bit intense. Okay. Oh, come on. What is this guy's name? I hate to phrase it like, oh yeah, he's a competitor to Matt Mercer, but it's not. That's not how the community works. He's just another big name in the kind of the D&D space. So, and it starts with an M too. So naturally, I can't think of anything except for Matt Mercer, and that's not it. Anyway, this other person who I will have to look up and then probably put into the details on the YouTube video after the fact, is another like DM. He does some tutorials and stuff online for how to DM and stuff. Yeah, in a couple of seconds I'll probably just turn around to my computer and my phone and look it up because it's gonna drive me nuts. But it said, oh yeah, he's that one. Oh, I'm like, oh, this is good. So like they have, so now I'm like formulating stuff in my head. Oh, okay. So, well, what if the birthright was actually this trinket, this little, 20-sided carved piece of jewelry that somehow got passed down, and so that was how Grenna and her brother kind of got born into not a very forgiving world, that's for sure. Her brother was born into this world, and then suddenly he was also extinguished. Just, yeah. But I do have like a short story that I'm planning to do up, and then voice that over some of the creation and coloring of that that first piece. But yeah, she was didn't make the best of choices in life, and so her brother ended up suffering for it. It's all a misunderstanding too. And there might be some evil, manipulative grandmother or something like that in there. But I'll have to wait until I finish the story and get it out there. I don't know if I like this. We'll see. But yeah, that was the first one. So that first drawing, that one came from as a result of inspiration from several prompts. So then I went and I found a reference image of the pose that I felt was like fitting. Just always good to look up reference images. Makes life so much easier to get started on stuff, and it's also kind of fun to then throw in all of your embellishments and adjustments and transformations, and you know, turning it from a human to a half-elf, and all these other things. Huh. I must have... I think I got lost in the weeds here. I'm looking at my reference because I scan these in. Like I scan these in once I get the line art done, and then I'll use that as my as a way for me to play around with colors before I decide to put the final ink on paper. And so just kind of getting that general overall color scheme to the place that I want it to be. So I have another device off to the side where I have an image of what I'm working on, or you know, of like the mock-up of the colors. So, but I think I started coloring here where it's supposed to be something else, and I kind of got lost because it's all, the background is all mush anyway, because that's not where the details are supposed to be. So I'll have to excuse me too, because I've got dry weather here. Anyway, so first drawing in this series was from a word prompt, or you know, from a multiple prompts, to be honest. And so I'm like, okay, yeah, I got this one going. And then, oh gosh, wait, it's probably been more than just a year. It's been a couple of years now that I think about it, because the next drawing I did, I think the next two drawings I did, yeah, I'm kind of staring off at the finished ones that are hanging on the wall, and I'm like, okay, so who happened when, and how, and why? But I think around the same time that I started Grenna and her, that's the Assassin Warlock, and her stuff, I think I also I kind of came up with a whole bunch of prompts and stuff, and then I was playing around with them, because that one website, which if I remember to, I'll try to link it in the description of the YouTube video. Who the F word is my character. Like, it just gives these really interesting one short sentence starting prompt. It's like, oh, this is kind of something that you can, in one sentence, describing a character and kind of their background. So usually, like, it gives a class, a race, and then some weird fact about their background. And I'm trying to remember whether, like, what ones of these came from those kinds of prompts and what ones didn't. Well, maybe lost in the annals of time. Um, but I do know that it was definitely interesting. Because I think I did two after that one. Because yeah. I think I either inked or I did a color check. Might have been a color check on the assassin during my honeymoon. And I think I started, like, I know I I remember starting the Medusa one in the car. It was a long car ride for multiple days, so there, and I wasn't the one driving, so things, you gotta keep yourself busy somehow. So my outlet usually is drawing. So that's something that's easy to, start, pick up, put down, all that stuff. Anyway, so there are, if you're paying attention, and it's a little bit harder to see, I think, on the last one that I used it, but like there are 3 of the first 5 ladies actually are, they are from the same reference photo. So I was kind of, what ended up happening is 2 projects kind of got merged into one as they were kind of developing. So it's like, ooh, I really wanted to do this assassin thing and some of this D&D stuff, and then I wanted to show how characters can, how you can use a single reference image to create multitude of different pictures and characters and stuff like that. So I was kind of trying to prove that idea as kind of an exercise for myself, and inspiration for creating more art, and doing some practice work that felt meaningful. But I'm catching myself creating fantasy characters kind of based on D&D stuff. So I ended up with like a Medusa, and then an undead. Oh yeah, that was the other project. Okay, so this is actually a combination of like 3 projects, which I probably won't fully, which I don't think actually would be all on their own fulfilled. So I had an idea, and this is where the Medusa and the undead lady come from. Oh, and the air elemental, which was the very last one I did before this one. Like all 3 of those came from, I want to go through the different kind of monster types or creature types, and try to make something out of them. So, and I can't remember if I was planning to make them into like playable characters, or if it was just I wanted to do this exercise. So I wrote down a bunch from, I wanted to do one from each category. So there's things like undead, there's elementals, there's celestials, I don't remember remember all of the categories. Some of them were gonna be really like things like abominations, and some of them were gonna be really in like non-humanoids. There wasn't much how I was going to make that into a more humanoid character for an illustration was going to be interesting. Anyway, so I'm using these all as prompt ideas to get a piece of, to get me into working on a piece of art. And, you know, I think after I created those first three, I'm like, you know what, I could just do this fantasy RPG women. Yes, I wanted to call it fantasy females, and then I figured that would probably be attracting the wrong crowd. There might be either banning just because of the title, or, you know, people very disappointed that they came to one thing expecting certain things and not getting them, as opposed to the strong female characters I'm trying to create here. So yeah, me trying to create strong female characters yet calling it fantasy females kind of felt like a way too mixed message stuff. It does not to say that I like the 10 fantasy RPG women title of the project. It's more of I couldn't come up with anything better. You know, maybe eventually I'll think of something, but yeah. So anyway, so originally we had a whole slew of prompts for characters, and then we had prompts for, you know, a list of all of these creatures I wanted to create. And then the idea of this, of creating the same character from, or not the same character, using the same reference to create different characters, different scenes, and stuff like that. Just kind of an exercise and to kind of show how that works. Which I think I actually was sort of combining that one already with the monster or creature types and stuff. So technically those two were actually the same project at one point. And then I just kind of mashed it all into what it is today, which is these. I set it out so that I would do 10 females, 10 women, in this fantasy D&D like setting. So, and yeah, this has actually been sort of in the works for I think a couple of years now. Like, time flies so fast. It's kind of weird. But I think I've only really been streaming this process like this year. Well, technically last year, but within the last year or so. But yeah. So we covered the first one, which was Grenna, that assassin. Yeah, and I colored the wrong thing again. I guess that'll just be a kind of weird spot on the tree. So she actually has a good chunk of her story actually fleshed out. So I just need to kind of get off my writer's block and go deal with finishing it. So I can share it with everyone else. And then after that, I am really trying to remember who got colored first, but one of the two, either the Medusa or the undead, and I think it was the undead that got colored next. And it's like, technically I started on a project with her where it's like, okay, this is just a monster thing, but now I have to come up with what class she would be and what she would be. Because I was just kind of doing a generic undead zombie-like thing, but like if she's supposed to be a hero, or playable character, it's gotta be like, I don't know. I still haven't fully decided whether or not she's a lich, but she's definitely a sorceress. We're gonna go with that. She has some interesting background because she is okay, I guess. Anyway, I keep looking back at the other image that I have on my computer that I like scanned in and stuff, and I must have anticipated there being more over here, because I must not have been able to see like from the scan where the end of the page was, so I have a much larger tree trunk on the digital one than I do on this one. Speaking of digital stuff, I know I go all over the place. Bear with me. It is kind of relevant though. But speaking of the digital stuff, So I'm working with alcohol markers here. And when I first started working with alcohol markers, I thought, when I first started, it was a pain in the butt, and I kind of gave up on it for several years, and then picked them back up. And I'm like, oh, this actually works well. But like I like how much easier it is and less messy to color like my illustrations, and how cool it comes out looking. It can come out looking really, really rich and vibrant, and I don't have to worry about drying times or accidentally spilling water on it and ruining it, which also is, if you accidentally spill alcohol on it, then that's another story. But yeah, like I love how easy it is to lay down the color and then build up that shading, and it's something, if I want to, I can pack up and take with me and work on the stuff as on the go if I want to. It's far less messy, far less frustration, packing and unpacking. So it's like, yeah, this seems like a really great medium. Okay, that's where those come. Okay, gotta finish out the trunks over here. Like this is great. Yeah, no, it does not have staying power, folks. If you want to create beautiful illustrations with alcohol markers, or possibly any markers, probably also apply to watercolor markers too, or water-based markers too. You cannot expect, it is not an archival quality medium, meaning these colors ain't gonna stay this way forever. They're going to quickly fade. They're going to far quicker than inks or oils or I'm trying to figure out what's bark and what's not. Or other more traditional mediums. Not to say that those ones are always archival quality. Sometimes they are not. You gotta look at light fastness and all sorts of stuff. But these will dull over time. They're originals, and it's just not something that's you can expect to last any useful amount of time. You know, I don't know if I want to say, you know, I haven't seen a lot of caricature artists in person, so I don't know what they use for markers, but I think even over time, like whatever they're using, whether or not it is alcohol markers or some other type of marker, like that's gonna fade. It just is, and that's the tricky part of crap. I missed a tree. That's the tricky part of using this medium, even though it is so easy to work with and gives you such pretty results when you're finished. It just doesn't last. And that's kind of the sad part about it. And I was reading an article today, and they're talking about like reminding people that, oh, I guess that I didn't finish this apparently. Reminding people that markers, alcohol markers and stuff, are meant for like design. They are meant for the initial concept of something, not necessarily for a final product. So, you know, you slap out a design or concept or idea and show it to whoever you want to show it to, and like they get to, you know, say yes, no, change this, change that, and you can do that. And that's what these are meant for. And you know, I hadn't thought about that aspect of it when, you know, when I first started this. I'm like, oh, okay. So you're telling me these things are gonna fade over time? And so I have had the good sense, at least, to scan them in. So that is the number one lesson to learn if you have alcohol marker drawings that you're doing, or probably any marker drawings, to be honest. You should be scanning them in to your computer, you know, as soon as you're done with them, because it's just not gonna last. The article said it's not just the light, it's air, it's just kind of, this stuff will decay in its quality. So you need to be aware of that going in, and so you need to make sure that you're scanning stuff in, and as you're finishing it, and not just expecting it to be okay in a couple of months still, or a year, or whatever. You have to acknowledge the fact that it is very temporary medium. Maybe not as temporary as a sandcastle, but you know, it's still one of those mediums that just is not made for being long term. So keep that in mind. But here's the rub of it, or the tricky part of it. This year I've decided I want to attempt to, you know, go to some art fairs, craft fairs, stuff like that, to, you know, show and sell my work. Problem is, lately, the majority of my work has been in this medium. So it's not like I can just get away with bringing the originals, which I may still bring them, sad as that is, but you know, I would not feel right, would not feel ethical to sell the original, because I know the original is just not going to hold up over time. Not the same way that, you know, just doing a print and using that would... Oh, poops. I just used the wrong color on all of the wrong trees. Okay, well, okay. Maybe this is why I shouldn't talk while I do my art. But anyway, so I'd like to attend these fairs and a couple of Comic-Cons, you know, local small Comic-Cons, and you know, be able to show my art and sell it to people who are interested in it. The problem is with art fairs is they're art fairs and they have definitions of what art is and what qualifies as, like, they want you selling your originals, and if you're selling prints, sometimes it's limited to like 25% of what you're selling. And like I said, most of what I have just is not definitely, the originals are not archival quality. Any print you get would be far better than me selling the original of these, because like I said, it's gonna fade with time. I have I have the original of all of the ones I've done so far. I have them in like UV poster, technically they're comic book frames. Just you can tell my style, it's a little bit influenced by that. So anyway, I mean, even in that, like, I know they're gonna fade. I know they're gonna just deteriorate over time, which it's a little frustrating, but I'm also more than happy to have things digitally archived and just go and print them whenever I want to. But a lot of the art fairs kind of in the area are not like, oh, but we've got high-end clients who want to make sure that they are getting a worthwhile piece of art, and it'd be nice if it were unique. And like, well, I mean, the design is unique, yes, and I'd really like to be able to sell. I mean, it feels like the only people who could really get away with it would be photographers, who they have a lot of restrictions on the types of prints that they can sell. And then what else? Painters, like canvas painters and stuff like that. And I've done painting and stuff, but right now my style is far more this. It's the alcohol markers, the kind of comic book-esque stuff, and to be honest, it's easier for me. Like, I work full-time at a completely different kind of job, and it is far easier for me to open up a marker and start working with a marker, and then put it away in the hour or so in the evening that I have to work on one of these projects, than it is for me to like get out all of the paints and make sure everything's all set up with that, and then get a little bit into it, and then have to like wrap up for the night, and then a lot of paint's getting wasted, and all of that. Gosh, I'm just not getting the lines quite right. Yeah, it's... So, yeah, that's the thing, is there's kind of this disconnect between what I do and what I've seen like artists on the internet do, especially to sell their art. Is like I'm apparently more in with the convention style, which, you know, you can sell prints all you want there. And people are more than happy to see the print, you know, on a piece of paper, or, yeah, I'm not talking about like crappy, streaky, you know, inkjet printer, thin paper. You know, I'm talking about nice poster paper and stuff like that. But it's also not like the cliche, whatever. The glee, I think is what they call it. I don't do French, so I'm not sure the best way to pronounce that particular word. But, you know, which is like done with archival inks and paper, and, you know, super expensive. And but, you know, I got plenty of posters from artists that I really appreciate, and I'm pretty sure they're not Gleesy. But they work just fine. They still look fine. So in the grander scheme of things, you know, the bigger market, like, yeah, some of that stuff still makes sense, but locally trying to convince someone, like, and I get it, like, they're also trying to fight against, these shows are trying to fight against somebody who's just going to their own inkjet printer and that's not high quality, and printing out like photos and art and stuff. But I don't know. I've also seen some of the paintings at some of these art shows, and I'm like, I don't know. I'm not trying to knock artists, but plus it's also, here's the other thing, is like, some of the places it makes sense. Some of the places, like, yeah, you are gonna have some higher end clientele who will be able to afford some of the pricier stuff. But, you know, the area where I'm living, I don't know how many people are gonna be shelling out the kind of money that some of that stuff requires. And I'm rambling at this point, because I think I'm more focused on the art than the discussion I'm having here. Yeah, I think in conclusion, I'm trying to navigate like what they say on their forms and stuff for some of these art fairs, and figure out whether or not I should bother applying, whether or not, like, what I do, since it is, and the originals are kind of this impermanent medium, like whether or not what I'm doing is if there's a room for negotiation, let's put it that way. Because, yeah, one of my goals last year was to get into some art fairs, and I did not achieve such goal. I ended up hearing about art fairs a little too late in the area and didn't get there in time. You know, it didn't get an application in time. And then you know, just some of the things you're trying to figure out some of what are they really trying to say? Is what I do just not gonna work with them, or can we work together? Yeah, nah. So, but I am trying this year. I got into one fair. I'm kind of, and I applied to 2 Comic Cons, which I think probably are a little more the speed of kind of what I do. Because I've got more of the comic-y, illustrative type stuff as opposed to the rich person looking for pretty wildlife or, you know, scenic illustration or drawing or painting. Or yeah. So I grew up in a kind of small town that used to be a tourist town, or at least like I don't know, a satellite of a tourist town. So there's that, but like it relied on a couple of different industries that have since kind of left or collapsed in the town, and so it's, yeah. I'm sure the median income is not very high, but like I go back there every once in a while to, you know, visit relatives, and it's just like the tiny main street, and you got these weird people trying to make it like an artsy thing, and nobody is gonna be able to afford the artsy things that they're offering. Like all these little boutique things, and I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, I don't get, like, some of the stuff that, you know, the stuff that's being offered. Yes, I believe it's probably priced right, but I don't think it's priced right for the area. Like, it's not thinking about the area you're in, because it's like, I'm sure the average household is probably near the poverty line, and like, it's just like okay, let me try and explain it this way. Like in big cities, like the discrepancy between like the rich and the poor is, you know, kind of, I guess, expected. I don't know that I like that phrasing, but it feels less awkward or less obvious, probably because, like, for example, the richer people are probably not going to be shopping in the same place as, you know, the middle class and the poor. And then you oh gosh, I'm doing a really bad job of this one. So let me just stop there. it's like when the rich people decide to do a new park or a new museum or something, you know, like that, the other people who don't have the wealth can sit there and kind of roll their eyes at a distance, but it's not directly in their face all the time. Whereas like this town is just really obvious when the rich people are like having this weird clique in the middle of Main Street. Yeah, it's just weird for them to think that, yeah, they're gonna get like some of these businesses, they must like, I don't know if they're like a hobby business or something like that, where they're actually being funded by, you know, a husband or a wife or a relative or something who's actually taking care of all of the actual expenses. Because I don't see how some of those can operate indefinitely. Just yeah. But that's because it's a really small town. And having some of those things, you aren't going to have the traffic that you need in some of those like kind of boutique places. And like on the one hand, I'm all for bringing arts to people, and, you know, the arts to people in general, but it's a kind of a rural, like semi-rural community, so it's like, how many of those people who are living out on the farm and you know, struggling day to day are gonna want to go and watch some Art Nouveau play or performance or whatever, and you know, maybe I'm completely off the mark and it's just me kind of glancing back in from the outside from a perspective that can't see the day-to-day. It just may be that. I don't know. But I don't know, it's just interesting when it feels like a shop is tone deaf to the area that it's in. Like where I'm applying for some of these art fairs, it's not tone deaf for them to say, we really want like originals, we really want like very, very high quality art so that some of our patrons can, you know, very wealthy patrons can pay for that stuff. Whereas like when you're going to a Comic-Con or something like that, it's like, yeah, you might see some artists selling their originals and stuff, but they're gonna probably end up selling more prints than originals, just because the average person going to that probably can't afford to pay for that. You know, that's the kind of like the whole grand debate is like, how do you price your art, and what, like, where do you sell it, and a lot of that stuff. I don't know, I think I lost my own train of thought, and I don't think any of that Rambert actually made much sense to me, let alone probably you guys. So, let's go back to talking about these ladies. Because that seems like the safer thing for me to do and be able to know what I'm talking about. So, so yeah. First we had Grana the Assassin, next we had the undead, freshly raised from her grave, Cardea, I think is what I called her. Yeah, she's got an interesting story there. She doesn't know exactly at the point in the picture who raised her, but she'll find out eventually. And yeah, so I determined that she was going to be a sorceress because I'll be honest, I didn't have an idea what, like, that she was going to be of a certain class or anything like that. I just really wanted to draw a cool dress and the weird cape thing, and all of the filigree that's on her. And I wasn't really thinking deeply about, oh yes, and she's going to turn out to be like, no, I feel like I'm missing something. I am missing some colors. Okay, I'll have to revisit that later because I think I put all my other markers away. I usually try and pull out all of my markers and plan my colors ahead of time, so I have a nice little, I got a nice little stand over here with all of the hoo-hoos, and a little note card with what I'm talking about. Yeah, I still need to try and figure out why everything is backwards. I think I need to find a different, I think I need to flip it vertically. Or maybe it's horizontal based on the camera. Yeah, I got the camera in a weird position just because it's the only position I can have it in, to be honest. Anyway, so we have Cardea, the undead sorceress, who, like, I kind of played with, like, the idea, oh, maybe she's a warlock or something, and whoever, like, her patron is raised her from the dead. But I'm like, no, that's not, I already got a warlock. I can't put more warlocks in here. I was also planning a different warlock, too, and I've also determined at this point that, no, I already have the assassin warlock. I know she's technically a rogue class and a warlock class, but, like, she's covering both those classes. We aren't going to make yet another of either of those. So yeah, I determined that Cardea is an undead sorceress. I'm debating on whether she's gonna be a lich. That may be a thing. Gotta, think on that a little bit. But like, I feel like she also kind of fell into this prompt somehow, because I can't remember how the idea came around, like, about the haberdashery or haberdasher, so hat person. Like, somehow she's connected to that person, and maybe it's, yeah, that's a really, 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 really good question. I think what happened, I was trying to sort it out in my head. I think what happened was, like, I did her, and then I decided that I wanted to do this big project of the 10 fantasy women, and I was looking back through all of those other prompts that I had pulled from, like, for random characters to be generated from, and, like, okay, oh yeah, there was this sorcerer or sorceress one, and oh wait, I already have a drawing kind of started, and it's a guy, and I'm like, but so I can't really use him, but maybe I can just connect these two together. So I'm like, okay, he probably helped her out with, he's probably the one who helped her raise. I don't know that we can call this a resurrection. It's definitely not true resurrection. But he helped her get out of her spot, but obviously he's nowhere to be found right now. She's just kind of hanging out, sitting on top of her grave with some sort of ghostly hound. I think it was a grim hound. That's what I picked. I don't know. Because I also started doing animal companions. But that's really just for the ones who were in this. So either Cardea or the Medusa, Nikane. I can't remember how to pronounce her name. Uh, I pick names from behind the names, and I apologize, but I don't always know how to pronounce them. So that's something I need to kind of figure out before I produce any audio content relating to these ladies. But aside from this kind of off the cuff thing I'm doing right now. So, Cardea is... I don't know why that was all white. Huh, okay. You know how we kind of talked about earlier in the D&D world, you've got to be like to be a sorcerer, it's kind of like in your blood or whatever. Yeah. So she actually comes from a family who are really talented sorcerers in various ways, and yeah, she really hasn't been able to do anything at all, and she just was not happy about that, and basically her family was gonna kick her out. Sort of. They were gonna make her get a mundane job, and she didn't want that. She wanted to be a sorceress. She wanted to wield magic. She wasn't good enough to be a wizard because, you know, usually those who fail at being a sorcerer in her family would become wizards. You know, being a wizard in some of these fantasy RPG contexts mean basically you're a scholar who you study hard and learn how to use magic in a different way, you know, through knowledge and incantations and all of these other things, versus, so it's kind of like a struggle more than what it would be for someone who's a sorcerer, because that just kind of comes naturally, and it's more about learning how to control some of that than it is about learning. So it's about learning how to control their innate magic as opposed to learning how to summon magic and stuff like that. So that's her background, is she comes from that family, and you know, she's gotten to a certain age where if she was gonna have some sorceress talents, they should have shown up by now. So she's got to go out and find a job, or they won't even marry. Here's the thing: they won't even marry her off to another family, because there's an expectation of their family to uphold that, and since she has nothing magical about her, you know, there's a possibility that, you know, her progeny would not be magical either, and therefore, you know, they would be insulting whoever they married her off to, and that family. They wouldn't be giving benefit to that family. And so, yeah, in order to, you know, continue to stay under their roof, she's got to find a mundane job, since she wasn't able to hack it as a... She wasn't a good scholar. She wasn't able to hack it as a wizard either. So, she's kind of in this precarious state, and she meets someone who has a problem with wild magic. Some sort of curse or something was put on him. Probably some faith thought it was a blessing. And he happens to work as a haberdasher, and, you know, she sees one of the mishaps. It's like, oh, teach me magic, give me your magic, something like that. And after some not so good attempts, she ends up like just getting really desperate and trying to get him to give her all his magic, and whatever thing. I still gotta flesh this out, okay? But whatever way they found to potentially do that, kind of had very bad consequences, and she ended up dead. So, you know, this guy's feeling a little bit guilty about her being dead because he was trying to give her his magic or whatever and be rid of it himself. So he goes and gets some help, you know, raising her from the dead, you know, kind of making her an undead. So, well, not kind of, like, actually making her an undead. So, kind of, and he gets caught, and he gets thrown in jail. And she will eventually find that out as she goes back into town and stuff like that. And we'll see what she'll do about that when she finds that out. But, yeah. So, that's her story, kind of, and how I'm starting to work on fleshing that out. And then after her came the Medusa called Nikane or Nakane. I need to look up how that one was supposed to be pronounced. And she's obviously a Medusa, but she was a tough one for me to. She was another tough one for me to figure out what class I wanted to make her, because I'm like, she's a Medusa. Like, maybe she's a ranger because she's in an abandoned or a ruined temple of some sort. I think probably some goddess of love. And she has been trying to avoid people and stuff as much as she can, because she cares about people. She'd love to be able to, you know, have a relationship and have people around her. She's, you know, kind of studied or spent a lot of time at this particular temple, even though it's abandoned, and has been blessed with some cleric magic. Which, come to think of it, I think there's greater restoration can restore you from petrification. But I don't know how well that would work. It's like, oh no, I looked at you, you're petrified. Okay, I'm gonna cast the spell. Oh no, looked at you again. This is kind of an unending thing. So, but yeah, there's kind of, in her image, I feel like, okay, so in Grenna, the Warlock Assassin's image, there's a lot of story elements going on in there. You know, it's kind of a little sad, but like in Cardea's, the undead sorceress, she's kind of doesn't have a whole lot of story going on directly. I mean, obviously she's just climbed out of her grave. She's in a graveyard, and there's this shadowy, skull-headed hound staring at her. Like, that's not quite as much story as, you know, rats running away in a sewer, and, you know, Bloody Blade, and the body in the, you know, sewer, and the image of a patron. Yeah, I'm gonna just look that person up because it is driving me crazy. let's see, top. Ah, that's what it is. Okay, Matthew Koval. Matthew Koval was the one who came up in the random table as the old one that was, responsible, or the patron of my warlock. Anyway, so that's like the warlock assassin has a lot of stuff in it, and then like the I'm just sad to say that Cardea, the sorceress, just does not have a whole lot in her image as far as story goes. But they can get all the way to Nakane as the cleric, Medusa, and like you can see like she's in the middle of nowhere in a ruined temple. Like the stained glass is kind of telling stories that are more like about love and stuff like that. And then you have these petrified statues, some of them crumbled and vined over, and like you can tell that someone came in to try and kill her, like probably a paladin or something, because obviously she's a monster, even though she tries not to be. And then she's sitting down on she's sitting on the shoulders. I don't know, it was odd. She was sitting on the shoulders of the latest person who was petrified, which I think is a furbolg. I think I must have rolled that. Or either that or I asked my spouse to give me a random creature. And that was what came to mind for him, apparently. Anyway, and she's kind of, she's crying and kind of mournful that she's accidentally petrified this poor guy, because he just happened to glance up at her. It was an accident or whatever, and like the only thing that's there to kind of comfort her is a cockatrice. And for those who aren't familiar with that, it's gosh, how to describe it? It looks like a cross between a chicken and a dragon. So it's kind of got like those dragon bat-like wings to it, but it's got like the little waddle and beak of a chicken. This rooster, I guess, would be a better term, but yeah. But those creatures also can cause petrification, but because she and it can do that, they're immune to each other's stuff, so it's kind of reaching up with its rings trying to comfort her. So yeah, there's a lot of story going on in that one. And then and so both Cardea and Nakane, those two images actually are the same, taken from the same reference photo. It's kind of the same pose. Because like I said, it was more about, experimenting with what I could do with it, with the same reference image. Like, what all can I do with this? And then, so it's kind of weird looking at those two sitting next to each other, because it's two different people clearly, but yeah, they're both in the same pose. So after Nakane, I'm just gonna go with that one. I like that pronunciation better. Yeah, after Akane, so we move away from the Medusa, and then we enter into another one that was actually strictly was initially a word prompt. So it was like a ranger who's lost, who basically has magical prosthetic legs. I think was kind of lost in some sort of tragic accident or something. I don't remember how the thing phrased it, but like she has 2 magical legs and stuff. And I had a couple of different reference images that I was looking at as potentials to tell this story. Like one of the references I was looking at is not the one I chose, but one of them was like kind of someone kind of looking down, as if they were looking down at their legs and almost looking sad. I'm like, oh yeah, maybe this is like after the point that she's lost her legs, but maybe some wood elves or not wood elves, dryads, Hammond dryads, depending on how you want to put it, are helping her by giving her, they're in the process of giving her the magical legs or something like that, you know. But I didn't end up going with that one. Instead, I went with one where, you know, she's back on her feet, new feet, kind of in the middle of the forest, like as if she's just gotten up and hurt because she heard something, and she's starting to pull her bow, you know, with an arrow knocked in it. Like that one is, how many reference pictures is that one? So that one is like her body pose and everything came from a reference pack that I purchased. So I kind of used that as a reference to get me started with the pose. And then obviously, like, just looking up random little things like, what does a gauntlet look like? What does fletching look like? What does, you know, what kind of layering should some of this clothes be? And I kind of looked that up for like the assassin. I mean, the Medusa, I just put in a Greek toga. I mean, but that one was kind of a bit on the nose, I admit. But it also was really fun to play with that fabric. Anyway, so going back to the ranger, so the body pose was one image, a whole bunch of quick glances through like other reference images for what rangers wear and stuff like that was basically all of her clothes. And then yeah, I didn't, because those ended up being more like amalgamations of like just me, you know, soaking my brain in all of these different references and then coming up with something that was its own thing. And then because the previous 3 I did, like, I was afraid I was going to start doing the same face syndrome, and I wanted something a little more like actual, had a reference for it at some point. And okay, so that's how that's working. I'm just trying to follow through with what all needs to be this particular. I've got 2 different foliage sets that I'm doing and trying to figure out who needs to be what at the moment. So I had a separate face reference that I used. It was at a different angle, and I was trying to just kind of I'm not great at caricatures, and that's what I would like to be able to get good at. So it was one of the things I was practicing. I don't know that I captured it the way I wanted to. I think it turned out fine. Sometimes there's that one thing, like there's that certain aspect that you see in a reference, or especially for me for faces. But yeah, I just can't quite capture what it is I'm seeing. So yeah, the only solution for that is to practice, which is kind of what the point of a lot of these projects are, is just to give me a direction to practice in and make it more fun than just, draw a dozen faces over and over again. So yeah, so to get her made, just her, the character, it was like too official, like too heavily used references, and then the rest was just kind of, oh, what does a fan brace look like and all that stuff. Looking at multiples of those. And then I went on to do the background, which I think that was the first background where I did just use one reference photo as opposed to either just coming up with it on my own or looking up one element in there. Because like I looked up a yew tree for the Cardea one just because I wanted the symbolism in there, because those are commonly found in graveyards. And I'm trying to remember what it was, like representing life or something, death, or both. I can't quite remember now. But the background reference is actually that I used for the Ranger. What was Ranger called? Ranger was called Ainsley. So Ainsley, our Ranger, her background was actually a photo I took of on location, a photo I took on vacation of a particular area, and I'm like, hey, this looks perfect for as a place to put her in. My husband pointed out as I was doing like this whole background, it's like, well, yeah, you could maybe you should just do like a few detailed backgrounds or generic backgrounds that could be used on these, and just do the characters and combine them. And like, but this is also fun, then I have a complete piece of art here. And but also part of me is like, yeah, that might save me some time. So I don't know. Probably not for these ones, but yeah, it might be something I consider doing in the future, is having some backgrounds I've drawn. And that's something that I need to, like, I have been, in my time doing art, I have done far more art that is like character-based art and not much landscape or background. And certainly not much, not in this medium, as far as like I think this medium, the alcohol markers and the inks and stuff, I've really just done characters and scenes like this. But never like a landscape or anything like that, because it's just, that feels to me to be more in the realm of painting, either acrylics or watercolor or oils, like far more heavily. I've done that far more heavily in the oil range, just because, yeah, there's oils are really good for blending and stuff, but they're also messy. They take time to dry. Yeah, cleaning the brushes is a bit of a pain. Although I did recently get some water-based oil paints, which is kind of interesting. It seems very counterintuitive. I don't know how they're defying physics. Probably have some sort of emulsifier in there. But like with those, what you're supposed to be able to do is just use water really to clean your brushes and to thin the paint and stuff, which is in some ways better than having to go in and deal with you know, the mineral spirits and stuff like that, because that's not, the fumes from those things are not great. Or terpenoid, or turpentine, sorry. Terpenoid technically has some sort of better options, maybe, but everything ends up being like a game of, you know, a decision of like, well, yeah, it might not be as bad as this other thing, but doesn't mean it's terribly healthy for you either. So yeah. Anyway, yeah, just trying to find how some of this is supposed to go, based on what I had put in here. Like, for example, for this one, like, I kind of looked at, I think the background is mainly sort of one or two images. The snake's just free-handed. This, the character herself came from, one of those, another one of the reference packs that I own, because I like using those because I can have an idea, or I can take a pose and then come up with an idea. And I don't have to worry about imagining, okay, where does the anatomy go on this? Like, what is this, a dynamic enough pose? Like, I can immediately see that, hey, this is a nice dynamic pose. Oh, I can almost see a story going on here. Like, she's shushing something or singing to something, and then, oh, all of a sudden I have this snake whisperer who is hunting snakes. And yeah, I just slapped a barbarian thing on her because I didn't know who else would be hunting snakes, like, as far as a class would go. I suppose technically, you know, Warlock could have done it, but again, we're coming back to the Warlocks. There's just too many Warlocks. We know how bad it turned out for the Grenna's brother. But yeah, that's kind of where I'm throwing a little stuff in here, kind of. This is interesting. Trying to keep some details, but also muddle up others, just so it, you know, just to, like, the focus really needs to be on her. Which is another reason, like, like, I put her in this jungle scene because I wanted her in this jungle scene, but, you know, as I'm starting, jungles are dense and they're full of things to look at all over the place, and that, like, I'm hoping because of some of the things that I have done with the color choice and the line work that this will turn out all right, and she won't disappear into the background, and she'll be pretty prominent. But like, I did only a 0.01 micron pen for all of the stuff in the background. That's what I usually start with for to trace over the sketch, and then I erase the sketch, and then I'll go in with thicker lines in other places where I want it. But like, this one is a little bit different from the other ladies I've done, because I did everything in the same kind of line weight, more or less. And for her, I've intentionally gone through and thickened up all of the lines around her to make her and her silhouette pop out more. And I also did a similar thing with the snake. But we're gonna have a lot of greens, dark and darker browns, like red browns here in the background, whereas for her, she's gonna have more, obviously your skin's gonna be a little bit more peachy, and her like her clothes and the rope and all of that sort of stuff is going to be more of a yellow brown, so that's going to be different from these red browns in the background. And then I don't know what I want the snake color to be. That was a problem, I think, when I left off on this, is like, that was the last thing. Like, I don't know what to color this. But so the snake's probably going to get colored last. So yeah, we've got kind of initial layer on, some initial stuff done in the background. I still have to, like, I try to do 2 to 3 colors for, you know, for the shading. So you got your light, your medium, and your dark. That's kind of what I've been doing here with the trees and the moss. And so now I've got to do that with all of the leaves that I just did. And then there's some different color leaves I want to put in, just to give more of a contrast between the different parts of the forest, and also to kind of show some brighter leaves here, because this is kind of, there's like a clearing out here, and that's where a lot of the sun is shining through and able to get through, compared to like in the denser part of the forest here that's in the foreground, or the jungle that's here in the foreground. So yeah, that's kind of the plan, is to keep working on this, but it has been an hour and a half, and I have some other things I have to do this evening, so I guess we're gonna call it a night. Hoping by next week I will have a name for her. I will have to hunt one up, because oddly enough, I didn't go into the deep dive of trying to decide what her name was going to be to fit with her aesthetic. But yep, here's where we're going to leave it tonight, and yes, we'll see you next week. Bye.